What is going on, everybody? Jason and Angel are here today, joined by Tom. Tom, how are you today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Before we get into the Kickstarter and everything, what made you want to be a comic book creator?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. It was to be honest, it was sort of a, it is a weird question because there's a lot of people that always have like this, I always wanted to be a comic guy. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. I never really had that. Everything for me for comics that I've done as far as making comics, it's all sort of been sort of like falling into it. Back in the day, I used to draw a lot. I used to be an art guy, so I'm a writer now, but when I was a kid, I used to draw all the time. And so everybody kind of assumed that if I did anything in comics, it would be sort of the art side of stuff. But as I kind of started to draw in that context and figure out like what all that means, I started to realize that like, okay, even if I'm remotely good at drawing like a person, now I got to draw cars and trees and buildings. And, I clearly at my level of acceleration, I don't have that kind of lifetime in me. So I literally just fell back onto the writing side. I was like, okay, well, let me see if I can write a comic book. And so that's where I kind of started to learn this other side of the industry. But I think because I came from the visual side, because even when I was collecting comics, it was like, I was buying things because it was what I liked to see. Even though I came from the visual side, I was able to translate that into what I was writing in my scripts. And so it was really just sort of like, at the time I had my 9-to-5 job, we were doing fine. And this was like let me write some comics. We can go to cons on the weekend and, just kind of have fun with it. But then in 2009, when all the housing crash and everything happened, and I got laid off from my job, I was like, well, all right, let me take what I have. I had Penny for Your Soul. I had Critter at the time. Let me take what I have. Let me see if I can really do anything with this before I go randomly get a job somewhere else. And so by the end of 2009, I had Penny for Your Soul wrapped up. I had Critter kind of mostly wrapped up, and we took a shot at the direct market, the retail market, getting into comic book stores, which back in the day was much easier because you had one place to go. It was basically Diamond. And they looked at our stuff. They were like, yeah, this is good. We'll distribute this. Go ahead. Let's line up the dates or whatever. And by I think it was March of 2010, we were in comic book stores and we were off to the races. And so I was like, well, all right, well then that's what I'm going to do now until it stops working. But it just sort of never stopped working. And so here we are now 16 years later. So, that's a long answer, but that's kind of how it works. And sometimes you just stumble into the thing that is going to end up working for you. And it's just a matter of what you do with that opportunity once you have it.
I love that answer.
Hopefully you can edit that down. This is a 20-minute answer, but we're going to do 2 minutes of this.
So you mentioned Penny for Your Soul.
Yep.
I was looking at the artwork on that and oh my God, it looks amazing.
Thank you.
How do you come up with the characters for the backstory and such?
Well, it's sort of a double, it's sort of two things. One is I'm writing, so I know okay, this character is, a demon, whatever. I need her to have a tail. I need, and some of in Danica's case, our lead, I was like, I don't want her to just have hair. Let's make her hair, fire. Let's do this. Let's do that. But then from that sort of understanding in my script and within my writing, I have to then give that to an artist and say, okay, look, this is what I want. And then the artist takes that description and turns it into an actual piece of art. And then along the way, it's like, well, now fix the thing and add this and take away that. And that's the character design phase, which is oftentimes really fun. It can be frustrating because sometimes you get a situation where, I, as the writer, is like, this is what I want. And then the artist is over here like, no, but this is what you need. And I'm like, no, I don't necessarily need that. But, we can talk and we can Tetris pieces around and so on. So, and then just over time, you suddenly build it up. Now I have Danica. Now I have these angels. Now I have my Lucifer. Now I have, whatever. Now I have Critter. Now I have all of her sidekicks and so on. And it just starts building and building and building until you have enough visual element to, really dive in and start to tell a story. So, but it all starts from just me just being like, okay, what do I see? What is this character? What do I need them to be? What do I need them to have? Do they need a belt? Do they need a cape? Do they need wings? Do they need whatever in order to exist in the story points? And then I take those things and I say, okay, artist, this is what you're good at. And now translate this gobbledygook into like a real, finished piece of art.
How do you find your artists for like each project?
Well, back in the day, it was easy / harder because we didn't have the internet really when I started. I mean, it existed, but we didn't really have like social media. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have anything what we have right now, but we did have websites where people were, posting their art and stuff. So I used the site that was called Digital Webbing. I don't think it exists anymore. But basically it was a website of, what would they call them back in the day? Sort of like Reddit is now, where you have people post stuff and then they just sort of talk about it forever. I know there was a message boards, that sort of thing is basically what digital webbing was. And so people would go in and post their stuff and like get critiques and like, oh, here's my thing and here's my design and here's my page. Artists would post their art, to get jobs. But the cool part is that it actually did have a classifieds section where you could go in and say, I need an artist, I need a colorist, I need an inker, whatever you needed. And so that's where I got my first batch of guys out of. But then from there, then it's just then it becomes like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon sort of thing. It's like, okay, I'm working with JB. He comes out of a studio. So I need another artist. So I just go talk to the studio again. Hey, do you guys have anybody else to do this and do this and do this? And then, as you're doing it again, it's as you're doing it for a period of time, people start to recognize like, oh, like Tom's like done this for a minute. So I would start to get artists pitching themselves to me, whether at Comic-Cons or, whatever. Hey, I'm an artist. Here's my stuff. Tell me if you need me, whatever. And so that again, it's sort of like the characters as it just starts to grow. You start to make those connections of this guy, and then this guy recommends this guy, and this artist says, well, I work with this colorist, so let's bring that colorist in. And, it just becomes this big web of people that you can start to sort of tap on the shoulder whenever you need art, whenever you need colors, whenever you need a cover. And now we've got 16 years of my own digital webbing now. But it's still growing. I mean, even on this last book that we did this Legend of Oz anthology that we're doing this year right now, that's on Kickstarter right now, there's like 4 brand new people from artists to colorists through the whole thing. So even though, because part of it is that, at some point everybody kind of moves on. A lot of our guys have worked for us, have gone on to work for Marvel and DC and Dynamite and, all these other companies. So as they move on, you have to find a way to replace some of these guys. And, but now there's also sort of like it's not a great word, but there's a glut of content out there. And so now, like when I was doing stuff, I wasn't competing to get talent with 1,000 other people trying to do, their own thing. So now it's like, oh, that guy's really good. And he's like, yeah, but I'm working for this guy. Yeah, I'm working for this guy. Yeah, I'm working for this guy. It used to be people were like, oh, I need work. And I'm like, I got work and I got a lot of work and I got like forever work. Like, as long as you want to be here, you can be here. So JB Neto for Penny for Your Soul, he's the only guy who started with me and is still with me. Everybody else has drifted off, and like I said, they're working for Marvel and DC and Mad Cave and Dynamite, and they're all doing their own thing. And they come back from time to time to do, short stories and covers and stuff. But I've had to replace a lot of guys to try and create a new stable of people. And it's not always easy because the doors are constantly flying open all over the place. So, they, even if they're happy with where I am, if they see like, well, I can move myself up if I can draw Red Sonja or whatever, like that's better for their resume. Right. And I'm like, I get that. That makes sense to me. But That's the tricky part, is we kind of always have to have our fingers in, all of these different pies on the internet, so that if one guy is like, bloop, I'm out, I got to be like, okay, your turn, you're up. And we pull them in, and we got a couple of great new guys, and they were very excited to do the job, and I've got them on some other things now going forward. So that's great.
So getting into the Kickstarter, were you a fan of The Wizard of Oz? And can you tell us about the Kickstarter?
I mean, I was, again, this is taking me back to the day, The Wizard of Oz, there really wasn't a lot of Wizard of Oz like there is now. A lot of adaptations like Wicked and, all this kind of stuff. There was the movie, there were the books, obviously, but there was the movie. And back in the day, all you kiddies out there, we didn't have streaming, and we barely had VHS at the time. And so The Wizard of Oz was like an annual event. It would be like, oh, Wizard of Oz is on in April, and everybody would stop and watch the movie. So that was how we grew up, kind of with TV. And so when The Wizard of Oz came on, I would be like, yes, I need to watch The Wizard of Oz. I was a growing nerd, and The Wizard of Oz was a thing. So The Wizard of Oz was always something that was with me, but it wasn't like I hadn't read the books. When they did the sequel, Return to Oz, the Disney movie, I couldn't get into it because I didn't understand why it didn't look like the Judy Garland movie. Like, all the designs were different and stuff. I was like, something's wrong. Like, as a kid, I was like, something's wrong. I don't want it. And so
nightmares.
Yeah, it was just too weird. The Scarecrow doesn't look like the Scarecrow, and like, what is going on? I don't know. I couldn't wrap my head around what it was. And so, Oz for me was always just sort of a peripheral understanding of Oz things. But what happened was, so Wicked was a stage play for many, many years. And when I was married back in the day, I was looking to go get tickets to go see Wicked because I'd never seen it. My wife wanted to see it. I was like, all right, we'll go figure out a way to see it. And so I kept getting hit with that image that everybody knows, that Elphaba image where she's got her hat down, and she's smiling under her hat. And so that image kind of stuck with me because I had been like tickets, and I just kept seeing that picture. So back in the day, well, I still do it now, but back in the day, I would drive to Comic-Cons. I lived in Chicago, but I would drive to Comic-Cons. There was no point really in flying and then shipping stuff. I just loaded up the van and just went. So I would have days on the road just by myself, just driving. And so when I was coming back from Phoenix Comic-Con, I don't know if it was Phoenix Comic-Con, but I was out in Phoenix, Arizona for some event. I came back, as I was driving back, it was, it's Phoenix and it's New Mexico and it's Texas and it's just desert and tumbleweeds and cactus and, all this kind of stuff just in my visual. And so I started thinking about Wicked, like, oh yeah, I need to get tickets. And so that image popped into my head again, and all the terminology started to pop into my head, like she's the Wicked Witch of the West. And I'm going through what used to be called the Wild West. And I was like, oh, like the Wicked Witch of the Wild West. Like that would be kind of a cool, thing just in and of itself. Like the Wicked Witch of the Wild West. That's kind of cool. I was like, well, so if it's the Wizard of Oz, like Dorothy, she can't have ruby slippers. Like that would make sense in a Western world. So what could we do to modify that? And that's where the ruby spurs came from. And then it was, Toto. Toto could probably still be a dog in the Wild West. Maybe you upgrade it to be like a coyote or something. But I was like, well, she's going to have to ride a horse. So Toto became the horse. So I had days of this to get home, just modifying everything into what's the lion, what's the scarecrow, what's everything. What are we doing here? Are we just telling the same story? Are we modifying it? And so by the time I got home, like 3 days later, I had sort of a really loose foundation of what this was. And then I found out that this would have been early spring 2010 or 2011, I guess. And so as I was starting to kind of put this together, there was another company that I heard was going to be putting out an Oz book. And I was like, nope, we're not going to be second place. We're going to be first. And so I put it all into high gear, started writing scripts, had somebody start doing some designs for me, reached out to that studio that JB worked for. And I was like, I need an artist right now. I need an artist that's going to be here for 6 issues because we were going to do a miniseries. And it's Western and this is what it is. And so they threw me a few artists at me and I was like, it was immediate. It was like, that's it right there. That's what I want. Allison Borges, like, that's what I want. Is he going to do this job? And they're like, yeah, he's going to do this job. So we dove right in. So it was like the spring of 2010 or 2011. And we launched the book in November 2011. I put it into gear and we raced through it and we got it out on time. We got it out before the other company. So I was like, we're first. Yes. And, by the time we were on issue 3, I knew we had something. It was selling really well. The reviews were really good. People were asking about it. We had Nia Rufino was doing our B covers. And this was she had been doing a lot of colors. She did her first ever cover for us for Penny for Your Soul. And I was like, look, do you want to do like a series of covers? Like, we'll let you do one for all 6 of these covers. And she was like, yeah. So his covers blew up. And I knew we were off to the races. And so at that point I was like, okay, I knew that this was ending at 6, but I needed to reset the ending so that we had a door to keep telling the stories. And that's kind of where it all came from. And then the following year, we launched volume 2. The other company was going to launch after we finished volume 1, but we launched volume 2 before they could get theirs out again. So like, we're first again.
You're not first, you're last.
That's right. And so we got the series going and it was great. It's been fantastic. So that's sort of the general origin of where it all came from. And it's kind of become our gateway drug. Like if you come to the Comic-Con and you see our booths, like we have big banners behind us. So one of them is always Legend of Oz. We have our big Dorothy Gale banner that Nia did for us. And so people will come by and they'll see like the other banners, but 9 times out of 10, they'll look at that first and they'll be like, oh, like what is that? Because they understand Oz, even though they don't know what our Oz is. And so it's a real easy, like, oh yeah, well, this is our Western Oz, Ruby Bullets, Ruby Spurs, Toto's the horse. Here's the book. Have a peek. And that's been our super easy like entrance into Big Dog Ink stuff. And then if it turns out that that's not something that they are vibing on, then we've got superheroes with Critter, and we do horror with Ursa Minor and Scheherazade fantasy and kaiju epic and just all kinds of other things, and we can kind of direct them through and be like, well, there's something here that you'll like, and generally speaking, we can find something that they vibe on.
Have a little bit of it all.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. And that's just because that's just me. I mean, I came up kind of like just uber nerd. I mean, my family had no idea what to do with me because I was Star Wars and I was Battlestar Galactica and I was Godzilla and I was Jaws and I was just everywhere. I was everywhere but sports. Like everywhere but sports. Sports didn't come until I was in high school, and then I started to play football and realized that it was really fun to run into people and knock them down. I was like, oh, that's somebody should have told me this a lot earlier. But yeah, I was the nerd guy that then fell into the sports guy, and now I'm sort of all encompassing all of this stuff. But I mean, you can just see all the crazy stuff behind me. But yeah, that's it. It's just sort of like, and it's a plus and a minus because you can, when you're the boss, you can kind of wake up in the morning and just feel like, okay, what do I want to write today? And if I don't want to write Westerns, well, I can write superheroes. Well, I can write horror. Well, I can, whatever I feel like writing. But at the same time, there's also just the idea of like, no, that one's got to get done today. That's the today job. And then you can do what you want to do, when that's done afterwards and monkey around with other stuff. But it's also been something that's helped with, people ask about like writer's block and stuff. And they're like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, for me, if I get stuck in the Western, I can bounce out of it because I have so much else to write. I can bounce out of it and I can go write a horror book and I can go write superheroes and I can move myself away from, the dusty trails and that kind of stuff. And that'll often kind of shake the rust out of it. And then once I kind of have gotten those pages of like superhero stuff out, I can be like, okay, now let me go back now to the Western, and sometimes something that you write in these other genres will kind of spark an idea that you can take back to where you were. So, I still have those days of this isn't working, man. This isn't working. But I've found ways to work around it and just kind of keep going somehow. And that's how we've ended up with like a dozen different actual titles. And then, Penny for Your Soul has spinoffs, and Critter has spinoffs, and all that kind of stuff. But we've got like a dozen different titles that exist now within 16 years of doing comics. So I just kind of keep moving. That's all it is just keep moving one way or another.
Well, can you tell everybody about the Kickstarter?
Yeah. So this year is the 15-year anniversary of The Legend of Oz as a series. For the past few years, we've been doing what we call the BD. So you see, this is the BD 16 book. We've been doing it ever since 13. So it's BD 13, 14, 15 anthology books. But this year I decided to have it all be Oz. The previous anthologies were a mix of all of our different titles. So with this, I wanted to do something where we got to use characters that were mostly not in the main series, so we could really flesh out the world a little bit. So Overman Anu and the Invisible Bears of Vo, he's brand new. The Glass Cat has appeared before, but he has some new characters in his story. And then the Silver Princess is brand new as well. And all these are based on the Silver Princess is based on Ruth Plumley Thompson books. She picked up the writing for Oz after L. Frank Baum stopped. But everything else, the foundation for it all is based in the books. And it's just a matter of like, okay, here's this guy. That was the thing with Overman that I was like, I can work with this. I reset the details. Like Overman and the townsfolk in the books, they're all invisible, and they're invisible so that they can avoid being eaten by the bears. And I was like, well, what if I turned that around and the bears were what was invisible, and we have this guy who's telling this town that he's beating up invisible bears? Like, how would they know if that's even real or not? Like, he could just be making it up. And I was like, that's a great story. That's a fantastic sort of thought process of like, okay, here's a guy who's scamming a town. Or is he? And so that was one of the great covers that we have. I was thinking to myself, like, okay, if this guy's beating up invisible bears and skinning them and mounting their heads on the wall, like, you wouldn't see anything. It would just be like the plaque, and like nothing is on the plaque. So we did a cover like that where he's got all these plaques in the background, and there's no heads on them. It's just the plaque. Like, it's like, hey, I got all these bears. Like, okay, but did you? And so it was very fun to do that story. Samir Samau and Sean Lee doing the colors looks fantastic. Two new guys for us. Glass Cat is a cool story of basically this cat trying to figure out his place in all of Oz. In that story, that's the only one that connects back to our regular series. The other two are brand new standalone stories. So if you haven't read any Oz, you can just dive right into this. But the Glass Cat, he's in the Emerald City. There's problems going on. He's made of glass, literally. So he's starting to figure out, like, maybe this isn't the best place for a glass cat to be hanging out all this sharp, stuff. So he's sitting on the wall of the Emerald City, and he looks out into the, just basically into Oz. And he's like, yeah, but there's a lot of crazy out there too. So he's trying to figure out, like, okay, where exactly am I supposed to be? Where am I supposed to go? Even though he has a heart made of emerald, he's trying to figure out, like, maybe this isn't my place. And then the Silver Princess is a story where we take, she's a difficult one because in the book, she's literally from another planet, Anothur. So it's all puns in Oz books, all puns. Ruth Plumley Thompson is a master of the puns. So I wanted to take this idea of, like, okay, here's a character that actually came from another planet, theoretically. What would she be? What would she be doing? And so I tied that into this idea that the Gillikins, the North people from the North, they sort of celebrate her as their champion. But then as the end of the story comes, we start to see that somebody else is watching, and it ends up being the Diamond Peacekeeper, who's the North Peacekeeper. So Dorothy has the rubies, Glinda has the sapphire guns, the Witch of the West had the onyx, and the Witch of the North has the diamond pistols. And then they all have their own like spells and stuff that happen with those guns. So the Diamond Peacekeeper basically is like, did you forget about me? And so we have this Silver Princess and the Diamond Peacekeeper kind of facing off, which was really cool to do. So that's the general gist of the Ozthology. And then we'll come back into the main series like the end of July, early August. We'll do the next part of the main series. I'm going to be July. We were going to launch it early July, but I'm going to be having a monstrous road trip going to Reno and then down to San Diego Comic-Con in July. So July is a wash. There's not going to be much happening except for me on the road again. So who knows what's going to get developed after a month on the road. So, check with us next year and see what has popped into my head. But towards the end of July, once I get home, early August, we'll do the next piece of Oz as far as the ongoing series. But if you haven't read the book, like I said, you can read that anthology without any problem. If you want to dive into the series, we have all the trade paperbacks and back issues and all that kind of stuff. So you can just be like, bloop, just take me in and get caught up.
Awesome. So what do you geek out about? What's your biggest thing that you are super into?
Nothing at all.
All the stories in his head.
Yeah, whatever I make up, well, I'll tell you, before I came up here, I was upstairs putting my Godzilla figures in a new cabinet that we got upstairs. So I think that's my biggest geek out is probably Godzilla stuff. It's been the most consistent one with me. I came up as a Star Wars kid. Comics for me have kind of waxed and waned over the years. I don't do a lot of Marvel and DC stuff anymore. I'm just too into the people that are doing their own stuff. Like I've seen enough Batman. I don't need any more Batman. What else do we have? And so, I've got, just looking at my wall over here, I've got the run of Invincible over here. There's Hack Slash, Xenozoic Tales, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, all kinds of stuff. So, so that's where my kind of my comic realm is, but I'm a big movie person too. A lot of people know that I do reviews on movies. I don't do like deep reviews because usually I see the movie like the minute it's released, so I don't want to like spoil things, but I'll give them the generality of like yay or no. And so it's become a joke, hashtag Tom hates everything. So because I'm notoriously gruff on my reviews for things, but I do love movies. Last night I was basically live tweeting the original King Kong versus Godzilla on Facebook, just like things that I saw and taking pictures of the screen and stuff. So, but I'm big on shark movies. I've been on shark podcasts. I've been on Jaws podcast before. Love that movie. I can deep dive that movie with anybody. So it's a lot of fun, but it's everything. We just lost Sam Keith. He just passed like 2 weeks ago. So I've got some of the Max stuff up here, some G.I. Joe stuff, some of the old school anime that I like. There's some Dirty Pair there, of course, Robotech and things like that. But I'm just like my comics, the stuff that I write, it's all over the place. It's just kind of like, okay, did you do something that made me interested? Then I'm going to geek out over you. The horror movies like the Howling. We always have the conversations of like, what's better, The Howling or American Werewolf in London, and that kind of stuff. And so that's always fun to find people that are like one or the other, and really kind of like we fight, but we know that it's not like a fight. It's just like it's nerd war, right? Nerd war is not real. It's just I'm going to tell you why I'm right, and then and
it's
then
a good debate.
Yeah, right. And at the end of the night, you're like, it doesn't matter. We're going to go watch these movies anyway. So I love nerd war stuff. It's really fun if you can find people that don't take offense to it. Some people are a little too tight to be told like, no, you're wrong, and let me tell you why. But to me, that's the fun part, is like, prove me wrong. I want to know why you like this thing that I don't like, like, and I learn stuff from people in that regard, because people will bring me a different perspective of something that I've seen. Like, a lot of times I'll see a movie and I'll be like, I do not get this movie, this is horrendous, and then somebody will be like, well, let me give you my perspective of why I liked it, let me tell you how I got into this, and then I learned something. It doesn't necessarily change my mind, but I learn why somebody else has a completely different view of, something than I did. The perfect example is Godzilla. There's a movie called Son of Godzilla, which to me is the most unwatchable of all Godzilla films. It's painful to listen to. It's painful to watch. I can't. But then I'll talk to people who'll be like, oh man, that's like my favorite one. And I'm like, you have to explain this to me. And invariably I would get these responses of like, well, I used to watch that with my dad, like on Father's Day, we watched Son of Godzilla. And I'm like, that's it. You have that nostalgic connection to the film, which changes your ideology of it, whether it's good or bad or whatever. You have a reason to like it because you're latching on to memory. And so and I'm like, that makes total sense to me. 100% makes sense to me. It's still terrible, but I understand why you like it.
So I know you mentioned Reno in July.
Mm-hmm.
What conventions do you have coming up that you're going to attend where people could come check you out?
Yeah, so our shows started late this year. Let me get my convention list here. There's a bunch of first timers, and they start at the end of May. I should probably know because that would be important. Yeah, so they start middle end of May. So we go to Cherry Capital Comic Con, May 22nd to the 24th. That's here, North Michigan. Then I go down to Hall of Heroes. That'll be the first time I go down there. That's in Indiana the following week. And then the week after that, so it's a 3-week stretch. And the week after that, I go to Ozstravaganza, which is an Oz festival that's been inviting me out for the past 13 years. I've been a guest for them. That's the first weekend of June in Chittenango, which is where L. Frank Baum was born. And then Reno is the middle of July, the 10th to the 12th. I'm super excited to go because I'm a big Reno 911 TV show fan. So I'm gonna nerd out over some Reno 911 shooting locations. And then the con is super fun. And ironically enough, I start to see who they're posting is coming, and there's like Godzilla suit actors are going to be at this show. So I'm like, this was meant to be. This is ridiculous.
Right up your alley.
Yeah. And then like 10 days later, I'll be in San Diego Comic-Con. I will be at the Antarctic Press booth. Antarctic Press has been reprinting the Critter series for me. This is Critter. For those that don't know, that is Critter. That is our superhero character. They've been reprinting the Critter series for the past couple of years. And so they were like, yeah, do you want to come down and like be at the booth? I'm like, yeah, let's go. So I'll be at the Antarctic Press booth, hanging out with them for San Diego Comic-Con. And that gets us through the summer. And then we'll be back for Oz on Kickstarter. And then there's a couple of just up in the air ones towards the fall that we'll see. But we always round it out with Akron Comic Con the first weekend of November. They always have us out. So I'm usually down there with CB Zane, and we have a good time at Akron. Akron's a nice, small, like what they used to call like a ballroom show. But it's really, really comic centric. They usually have a bunch of comic guests. There's publishers like myself there, small publishers that are there too. So it's a fun, wrap up the year event down at Akron.
Awesome, Tom. Where can everybody find you online?
So bigdoginc.com is our website. You can get all your books there. Most of what we do is Facebook. Like everything kind of starts with Facebook. And then it goes out to, we're on Twitter and Instagram and all those kinds of places. You can look up Big Dog Inc. and you'll find us. We do have a Patreon as well, patreon.com/BigDogInc. So come hang out with us on Patreon. Yeah, and then I do podcasts all the time. I'm jumping on and off. In fact, we're going to be done here and in about half an hour on somebody else's podcast. So I'm on with JD Calderon and Rosario, and last year we were doing a show. I was doing a show with Allison Lear called The Oz Couple, where we would come on and talk Oz and just pop culture in general. We took kind of a break over the holidays because everything kind of everybody was bouncing around for the holidays. So I think we're going to be starting the Oz Couple back up again as well. So if you want to follow me on social, Facebook is sort of like start there, and then you can filter out the rest of the way.
And Tom's fun on podcasts, guys. I used to watch Carissa Grant's podcast, and yeah, guys, go check out the Kickstarter. It will be in the description down below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll chat with you soon.